This is What's Left America, and I'm Chris Tritico.
I'm Andi Georgsson.
I'm James Campbell.
And I'm Chris Bell.
What's Left America is produced by Left Out Media and brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors and friends like the Houston Federation of Teachers, Local 2415 AFL-CIO, and hopefully someday friends just like you. On today's show, we're going to cover great topics: criminalizing the presidency. Do you want some cheese with that wine? And snowflakes take over Hollywood. And of course, we're going to end the show, as always, with Out of Left Field. So we're going to get right into it. Criminalizing the presidency. You know, last week, a bill was filed to look at President Trump's ability, apparently, or his refusal to stop making money off the presidency. Representative Eric Swalwell, is that how you say it?
So.
Democrat from California, introduced a bill that would make it a criminal offense for President Trump and his family to, quote, enrich themselves by using the presidency. The new bill, entitled Corrupting Foreign Influence Act, would significantly improve the existing ban on America's highest elected officials receiving financial benefits from foreign powers, which was what was announced when he filed the bill. This has been talked about, the emollients clause in the Constitution. President Trump refused to divest himself from his companies. He's got a worldwide company, claims to have $10 billion in assets, refused to divest himself from his companies and is still making money off that company.
Pretty incredible that we've reached this point where such a bill has to be filed. I think it's interesting that if you take the wall out of Swalwell, he would just be Congressman Swell. And I think this is a swell piece of legislation that he has come up with. It's unfortunate that we have reached this point, but how else? Or after what we watched in Helsinki and all the conversation that has taken place after that as to why he is doing what he's doing with Vladimir Putin, but I don't think anyone has any trust in this president or this family to conduct themselves as every other president and their families have done in the past.
So I bet you the Hay Adams in Washington is pissed because all of foreign dignitaries are staying at Trump's hotel now. We're in the new territory, I think, in terms of the presidency and the emoluments clause. In terms of, this is a president who's basically decided he's not going to show his tax returns. He's not going to divest from his businesses. We are in a new territory because this president is doing all the wrong things. And if he wants to gain credibility with the American people, which he apparently doesn't care about, he would have divested on front end and we wouldn't be having this conversation, but unfortunately we are. And so here we are with a president who may be benefiting from being in the highest office in this country.
Aside from the people staying at the hotel in Washington, China gave his company a $500 million loan right after or right at the same time that he freed up the Chinese company, ZTE, to start doing business in the United States again. He got a $500 million loan. His daughter, Ivanka, got from China patents on products that she's been trying to sell, or trademarks that she's been trying to go for years. All of a sudden got 10 or 15 trademarks. The family has been getting things that they couldn't get for years since Donald Trump became president.
Why has it taken so long for Congress to do anything about this?
Well, that's a good question.
We all remember right after the inauguration when a woman that Trump said was his lawyer came with stacks of notebooks that apparently represented all sorts of forms that he had signed, divesting himself of businesses and putting things in blind trusts. And the whole thing was just a big show. And I can't imagine who fell for it except for his supporters. Since then, we've been dealing with one crisis after another that we cannot focus on the fact that the president has been using his office to enrich himself. It's amazing that in any other presidency, the president would have been impeached for this. But this is just
for less than this.
For much less than this. This is a back burner issue.
I think you make a great point about Congress inactivity on this. And Carl Bernstein made a really good point. He said with Watergate, they were holding public hearings, bringing in people, subpoenaing them to come in, having these discussions in the light of day. When all of these people who are showing up before Congress are being interviewed privately, the American American people need to see this. And when it comes to what's going on now with Trump enriching himself, they need to call people into Congress to talk to them so the American people could see what's going on, have them answer questions.
They're not going to allow any of that to happen. If it's anything controversial, and a lot of these roads the Intelligence Committee wanted to go down, I think we talked about this last week, and they always cut it off. They don't want to shed any light on it whatsoever. And of course, sunlight is the best disinfectant, but the Republicans don't want any disinfectant. And Andy, I think you raise an excellent point as to why haven't they done anything, but I just think that most members of Congress kind of operate on the same wavelength that we have, and thinking that it would never really get to this point, that no family would ever conduct themselves like this. Not just the president, but you also have Kushner and Ivanka and right. all the other players doing exactly the same thing. And it's just extraordinary.
Every president in the last at least 100 years has divested themselves of their wealth and of their businesses, except Donald Trump. There's a big question here with respect to Donald Trump, not with his children, but with respect to Donald Trump, if a bill like this is constitutional, and if a bill like this can criminalize it with respect to the sitting president. And I don't know the answer to that. It's going to take the Supreme Court to decide.
But D.C. and Maryland have filed a lawsuit from an advocacy group, and that is moving forward. And so if it does reach the Supreme Court, that again raises the question about whether this friendly court will basically give Trump a pass.
Well, that case is a pure emollients clause issue, a suit under the emollients clause based on his hotel.
Yes.
My question is can Congress pass a bill that criminalizes the sitting president's actions? And I don't know if you can pass that bill.
Well, it's sure worth a try. Because it's also very important going forward, not just for this presidency, but if there are basically two ways to raise enough money to run for political office in this day and age, and that's you have your own personal money or you're in a position to raise a great deal of money. And probably there are going to be a lot of folks who fall into the former category going forward, and this is going to become a bigger issue.
Right.
I'm glad Democrats come into office broke. I mean,
it helps. Doesn't help with your family. I'll be the first to attest to that. But it sure helps once you're there.
They get to write books after they leave the office. But Obama didn't have to worry about that, and Clinton either. So
in the emollients clause case that just got pushed through, the motion to dismiss was denied. The Trump administration was asking the court to limit the emollients clause to a gift, an actual tangible piece of property from a foreign government, and the court refused and said it can be much broader than that, and refused to limit it to people staying at the Trump Hotel.
I think that was the right decision, just from the vantage point of an American citizen. I think one of us already said it. It doesn't seem like we should need an anti-grifting statute out of the Congress.
Well, look, the decision was the right one based on prior case law, not with a president, but with people below the president been getting gifts in the emollients clause cases that are very old, said it didn't have to be a piece of tangible property, it can be other things. And so we'll see what the court does. If they get their new Supreme Court justice, God only knows what's going to happen on that. Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's move on. Do you want some cheese with that wine?
How are you spelling that wine?
Whine. You know, Sasha Baron Cohen, this comedian, or I guess half the country calls him a comedian, the GOP.
The rest of them call him an asshole.
Exactly right. Sasha Baron Cohen has pranked, I guess, most of the GOP by now. Sarah Palin went on TV whining about being a victim, which that was probably one of the funniest interviews I've seen in a long, long time. Jason Spencer, if you didn't see Jason Spencer pull his pants down and back up at people on TV, that was absolutely the funniest TV I've seen in a very long time. He's the Georgia representative, the Republican from Georgia, the State House representative, who's now resigning after getting pranked by Jason Spencer for his Showtime, I think the Showtime special that's out right now, or was out last week.
It's a series.
Who
is America?
Who is America? And Jason Spencer, he had convinced him that he was going to show him how to
anti-terrorist. Terrorists. Yes.
And you had to pull your pants down and back up at him and tell
you have to have skin to win.
There was so much wrong with that. I don't like Sasha Baron Cohen because I don't like the kind of humor where you trick people and you make them feel uncomfortable, because it makes me feel uncomfortable. And when Chris Bell sent that clip around, I didn't want to look at it, but I decided to click on it, and it was funny, but it was sad. It was sad because it was so easy to make this man yell out the N-word, to pull down his pants. He was told he should put a selfie stick under a woman's dress to determine whether she was a terrorist or not, and he willingly went along with that.
He had proposed anti-burqa legislation.
Yes, Georgia people are good, wonderful people, but boy, they have a way with electing idiots.
Anyone.
And if he did any service today, he got rid of someone who needed to be out
Anyone
of
who would
public
fall
service.
for the line of crap that Sasha Baron Cohen was giving Jason Spencer and do this stuff with a camera focused on him doesn't deserve to be representing anyone.
I blame it on the people who are working for these people. Who in the world does not know Sasha Baron Cohen? Who in the world?
Oh, he's completely hidden from it.
Because
And he's in disguise, obviously.
I get that, but Dick Cheney is the former vice president of the United States. Who allows someone like that to get close to the former vice president and get him to sign a waterboard kit in the next episode?
Because pomposity leads people to not understand that everyone wants to hear everything that they have to say. But the fact of the matter is, and it's sad to know that there are people stupider than Donald Trump, but Cohen tried to prank Trump, and he ended the interview before he could say anything embarrassing, and that is saying a lot.
But hold on.
Sarah Palin ended the interview.
But
Dick Cheney didn't pull his pants down and say the N-word.
Hold on. But it's brilliant the way he's gone about it, because obviously he says he's from Israel and he's supposedly been with the Mossad and he's going to teach them anti-terrorism, and that the one before that, getting the folks to go on and the kindergarten program where they were going to teach 3-year-olds how to use assault weapons, and they were dressing them up in little toys and stuff. It's some of the most extraordinary television one has ever seen. And of course, the biggest attendance that you see at any event in Washington is when AIPAC has their convention there and has their dinner and invites everyone. And it's the one completely bipartisan, almost 100% of Congress, House and Senate attends the dinner. And it's extraordinarily powerful lobby. Israel, obviously, people, rightly so, including myself, wants to be supportive. And so they knew that, and they came over there, and that's the way they were able to dupe these people and get them to do incredibly stupid stuff. And Jason Spencer was a little different. But what I love, in the wake of all this, you have all this teeth gnashing about, is this really right, the way to close the divide in America by making fun of these people? And all of the people saying that didn't say a peep when O'Keefe, or whatever his name was going on,
stole my thunder,
and going off and on with Acorn and with Planned Parenthood and everybody else, and videotaping and posing as characters, and doing it on a much more serious level, to where some really bad
consequences.
Doing real
destroyed
damage.
Acorn, basically destroyed Acorn.
And not only and that's where I was going next, actually, not only did James O'Keefe destroy Acorn and try to destroy Planned Parenthood, he did it by making up fact scenarios just like Sasha Baron Cohen, but he also did it with such aggressive editing that it was a lie. And
there's no editing in this.
Sasha Baron Cohen showing you what happened. And playing what happened on TV. They're editing, but it's not the way James O'Keefe edits.
Well, again, O'Keefe played to an audience of people who, wanted to believe this kind of stuff about Acorn and Planned Parenthood. Sasha Baron Cohen has also pranked Democrats like Howard Dean and Ted Koppel. So he's been equal opportunity tried
Koppel
to be.
Koppel also ended an interview.
He absolutely ended the interview.
I was happy to hear, because I actually do have a level of respect for Mr. Koppel. But I think that they're not equivalent. One is comedy, and one is a concerted effort by Republicans on a much broader scale to demonize certain institutions that Democrats support. And Acorn was, I don't know, they're gone. Okay, Acorn helped low-income people get into home ownership for the first time. I know for a fact that they did a good job, because when I bought my first piece of real estate, I went to Acorn for advice, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was a young person in my 20s. I had just come to Houston.
They sell summer homes?
I is in another life.
Who knew?
At this point, I would like to remind my mother-in-law that I owned real estate before I met her son.
But let me ask this then. Is Sasha Baron Cohen and James O'Keefe, are they both doing what they're doing for political purposes?
No.
Well, no.
I don't think so.
Obviously, Sasha Baron Cohen's doing it for the entertainment value. But I just think it's interesting, everybody crying about it. But I'll tell you what I also think is important about it. And I can't, all these folks saying, about the divide and closing it.
Right.
And I understand what Andy's saying about being uncomfortable. Some of the stuff that he's done in the past I don't find particularly funny. It just made me a little bit uncomfortable. But on this, going back, and I was on city council and I was invited to go to a Daughters of Something meeting for honoring city council members. And anytime, just FYI, if it says daughters, you can pretty much count on that not being a very progressive group. And what they should have said, we were going to honor Republican city council members, but I was on city council. I accepted. Allison said, look, you already RSVP'd. Yes, we need to go. And all my Republican colleagues were there, and what their greatest enjoyment was during that evening was just watching me and how uncomfortable I was. And the woman who was the keynote speaker was an African-American woman who obviously was getting a lot of support from the Republican Party from going around the country making the same pitch and talking about how evil the Democrats were because of welfare, and that she was on welfare, and if it was for the Democrats, she would still be on welfare, and it was just absolutely horrible. But we've all heard that the most important way to gauge somebody is what they do when nobody's looking. And so in that setting, when they thought that it was all friends, they can say whatever they want, and the rest of us be damned, because you're not going to really know what goes on behind closed doors. But it was extremely discomforting to see what they're actually saying when there are no microphones, no cameras around. And I think what we're seeing here with Sasha Baron Cohen is a real up-close look at who is America.
I just want to hear Jason Spencer yell the N-word in the hood and see how many people come to his aid.
But I know we're going on a little long on this topic, but it's so important because look where they've taken politics, where you could even have a show like this.
That's exactly right. His first show was about Republicans signing on to toddlers having guns in classes.
And endorsing
and
that.
And they did.
Yeah.
I mean, and so if they're going to take it to that level, why at some point aren't we just going to make it sort of the theater of the absurd?
Yeah.
I talked to a group of young people this week on a campaign here in town, and I told them, that's a problem. I mean, since the Republican Party's made it all about winning, that's all they care about. That's why you've had this inordinate amount of conversation here in the state of Texas about a bathroom bill that will do nothing to impact anybody's life, but they've decided it's good politics, and they do the same with guns and anything else. And so they'll say whatever.
Let's move on to something else bizarre. Snowflakes taking over Hollywood. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Hollywood's new zero tolerance on offensive speech makes zero sense, is what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said. Paramount TV president Amy Powell was fired last week for making racially charged comments while discussing the reboot of First Wives Club that would feature a predominantly black cast. A day later, Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn was fired as director of the third installment of the Guardians movie for a series of edgy jokes he tweeted between 2008 and 2011. Within hours of that, a backlash erupted against the trailer of a new Netflix series, Insatiable, claiming that the show fat shames girls, resulting in 11,000 signatures demanding that the show be canceled. All this just weeks after Roseanne Barr's insensitive comments, whether intentionally racist or not, her show was canceled immediately. Has this gone too far?
So I think he makes a really good point in this piece in that Hollywood likes to celebrate the virtue of taking decisive action and firing these people almost immediately instead of looking at the systemic issues with Hollywood and dealing with the systemic racism and the lack of roles for minorities. And we were discussing a couple of weeks ago about Johansson leaving a role where she was going to play a transgender person because she did the right thing, I think, because Hollywood does not want to do the hard work of finding people for roles that, they're perfect for. They'd rather give hand-wringing to, we took decisive action in Me Too. We took decisive action with this racist comment. Instead of going out and diversifying the industry, there are a diversity of moviegoers out there, and they want to basically hand-wring over things that are superficial, important, important, I think, that they do these things, but I think they also need to do the work in going out there to diversify the industry.
But how does James Gunn get fired over jokes he told in 2008 and 2011?
Well, and see, something that's being lost here is, shouldn't there be some context? Shouldn't we look at some of these accusations that are being made and maybe dig down a little bit? Because apparently James Gunn is one who really had changed his life. I mean, he readily admits he said some terrible things and was a provocateur and was putting things out on Twitter in order to sort of light it up to get a response.
Right.
And they're terrible. If you look at them completely out of context, you say, God, who could ever hire this guy? But then he spent the last several years completely changing that. But none of that is ever taken into context. And so I think you really, when some of these accusations come out, people need to dig down a little deeper and see what's really going on. I remember when Aziz Ansari was accused months ago, and I was really upset about that because I'm a big fan of his, and I went and actually read what had been posted on the blog. And so here are two people who are in his apartment naked, and he thought that was an indication that she might want to have sex. And, it's foolish me.
Well,
Yeah.
just the two people in the apartment were Aziz Ansari and the woman who wrote the piece.
Right.
In was it the Daily Beast? I think is where she wrote it.
No, it posted on something a lot lower than that. It
Yeah.
got onto the
But
Daily Beast,
it got a lot of play, and I also question that because
it was
it
kind of
sounded like
bad
it was a bad
sex.
day.
Yeah,
it was a bad day that
Right.
led to
or bad sex, as it was explained to me later.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, and
Lord knows. So I'm glad there weren't a lot of blogs around when I was in college.
so you're saying, but there was a lot of bad sex.
Well, I think it'd been
that
written about.
Zero. Dear Diary, Chris Bell. Zero tolerance policies are almost always bad. I think they, like James Campbell said, they are the easy route. It just, and I think in schools, a lot of damage is done with zero tolerance. We just kick the kid out, or we just call the police.
Right.
We don't use our common sense. And I'm glad that we are having these discussions. I have made the case that political correctness is about being polite. And if a woman who weighs more than average says that she is made to feel bad constantly, I am going to listen to what she says and not assume that I know better than she does what it feels like and what she's dealing with.
Well,
But the last deal on the Netflix series, Insatiable, that was on a trailer. And most of the people apparently don't even know what the show is about. It's about a woman who apparently was overweight, then lost weight, and comes back to high school to seek revenge.
I'm not making that point about. I'm not making that point about any particular show.
No, I know you're
this particular
not.
Show. I'm saying if Chris Tritico does not want me to call him a.
You can call me fat. It's all right.
Not well. I was trying to think of something funny but not offensive. Whatever. If he says I don't want to be called by that, I don't want to be known as that. I don't think that that's funny. Then I'm just going to go ahead and listen to that. Refer to people the way they want to be referred to. Now I'm second guessing myself because on college campuses, we are protesting every speaker that comes and says something that we don't want to hear. And college campuses are a hard problem. This is a place where kids are supposed to be exposed to things
Supposed
that
to
they
be
don't.
debating.
They're supposed to be debating. But there is a part of our society that is being purposely provocative.
But part of the problem, though, Andy, too, is and that I think Chris was trying to raise, is going back 7, 8, 9, 10 years to find what people had said. James was talking about earlier that he used to write a column. I bet we could go back and look at that column and find things in there, completely out of context and throw them out in this day and age and say, oh, what was he saying back then? I don't know that for a fact, but times change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the problems, Chris does a bunch of criminal law. I used to. And the first firm I worked for was a criminal firm. And they finally, and this was like 1993, and they were finally some of these cases that were left over from the savings and loan crisis that had turned into criminal prosecution. So here are people who have done these things in the 80s, which was completely different the way they were doing business then and what was going on, being judged on the standards of 1993. And it wasn't pretty what was happening to them because things had changed completely.
So is Hollywood going to cleanse itself into being no longer entertaining or funny? Is that where we're headed? I mean,
I don't think that it's going that far. And yes, Chris, I wrote columns about how language and words matter because I think they do. And I think that, Hollywood shouldn't be given a pass. But look at our politics now. Recently, there was a story about Josh Hader, who used to be a Houston Astros farmhand, who made made some homophobic, racist remarks back in the day when he was 17 years old. And that surfaced recently during the All-Star break, and this kid had to apologize. I personally read it, and I believe he's sincerely apologetic. His teammates didn't hold it against him. He's in a diverse clubhouse. I think the zero policy tolerance does not work. I think we need to take everything on a case-by-case basis.
Because of the social media world that we live in now, I think that the way we look at things in people's past, meaning older people, the way we look at things that people did in the past versus the way younger people are going to look at things in people's past, that whole paradigm is going to change, because every person 25 years old or younger has a past that is easily searchable. No one can see when I played hide and go get it in my neighborhood. But anyway.
Well, if this type of stuff is going to be the way Hollywood's going, they'll never be able to make a movie like Blazing Saddles again. That's for damn
they shouldn't.
Sure.
Honest to God, it was funny at the time.
It's the funniest damn movie ever made.
But rewatch it.
Rewatch.
Yeah, it didn't. That did not age well.
It has not. But
Let's
it
move
was
on.
funny at the time.
All right, we're going to move into out of left field, like we haven't been there for the last 15 minutes. Who wants to go first?
Or who even wants to go?
Who wants to go?
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell your story about the Astros, and then I'll go. Chris Bell.
No Astros this week.
Really?
You'll be so proud of me.
Okay, well,
I'll even go first.
You go first.
I am going to do something I've never done. I'm going to give Donald Trump free advice. I was reading the story on CNN.
Well, you usually charge him for the advice.
Reading the story about CNN about Chief of Staff John Kelly, who everybody predicts is going to leave. He's hit his 1-year anniversary, and now it's just a matter of when that he will actually leave. But I love this paragraph from the story, and because they were talking about replacements. And it says, Trump has looked at 2 experienced political hands as possible Kelly successors, polling friends and advisors about the possibility of tapping Office of Management and Budget Director Mick Mulvaney or VP Mike Pence's Chief of Staff Nick Ayers to take the reins. Mulvaney, whose sharp wit has impressed Trump, is seen as the strongest candidate, 3 sources inside the West Wing told CNN, though Trump has remarked that he likes Ayers' hair. Yes, Trump has remarked that he likes Ayers' hair. That is actually in the story, and I just want to give some free advice. Here in the state of Texas, we had a governor whose strongest attribute was his hair. In fact, they even went so far as to call Rick Perry Governor Good Hair. While he was in office, we competed with Mississippi to see who could rank lowest in almost every category that states are judged by. Go with Mick Mulvaney, Donald Trump.
Cracking me. All right. Last night, I've got 2 best friends and their wives, and we have all been friends for over 50 years, since middle school, and since elementary school. And we've remained friends our entire lives. And last night, I went to my friend's 35th wedding anniversary. My other friend's been married for 36 years, and in about 2 weeks, my wife and I will celebrate our 35th wedding anniversary. And there's something to be said about friendships that have lasted. Now, you add it all up, we've been friends for about 152 years, and we've been married for a little over 100 years between the 3 couples. And there's something to be said about consistency and commitment and love that lasts 150 years. And it's meaningful, and it's purposeful, and it's important. And our country could use it. That's my out of left field.
My out of left field is cannot match that in terms of sweetness and beauty, and that was really lovely. My husband and I just celebrated our 20th anniversary, and I remember when we talked about one of these days we're going to look at each other and we're going to be old, and we thought that was really neat. And now we look at each other and we're old, and it is neat, but we looked cuter when we were. Congratulations. That's a wonderful story.
Thank you.
I read something in the opinion section of the New York Times this morning that just chapped my hide. It's an opinion piece by Kim Brooks. It's called Motherhood in the Age of Fear. And this is a story that Kim Brooks wrote about a time that she left her child in the car for a few minutes, and someone took a picture of the kid in the car, took a picture of her license plate, and went to the police. And the bottom line is that she ended up having to be interviewed by Child Protective Services, and she had to go through this whole process of defending herself against charges that she was a neglectful mother, and she got out of it with 100 hours of community service. And that made me incredibly angry. I think that motherhood is policed to within an inch of its life these days, and it brought back a memory that I had when my son was about 4 years old. I picked him up from school. He was hungry. I was tired, and I thought, well, I'll go through the drive-thru at Starbucks, and I'll grab him something to eat, and I'll get myself a coffee, and then we'll go home, and I'll make dinner, and we'll get this show on the road. He had to go to the bathroom. It was an emergency situation, and we were stuck in the line. There was nowhere to go. I said, just run around the building and just go to the bathroom. He did not want to do it, but the alternative would have been wet. He ran around, and a woman who was farther ahead in line apparently saw what he was trying to do, which he wasn't able to bring himself to do, started taking pictures, said she was going to call the police, and you all have heard me lose my temper. I did not, though, but the incident stuck with me. If she had called the police, I don't know how that would have gone, but in situations like that, women have lost their children to foster care. They have been brought up on criminal charges, but the fact of the matter is we all need to just back off a little bit and let moms make the judgment calls that they need to make in various circumstances. It was an emergency. I made the best choice that I could make. No harm, no foul. Quit taking pictures of everyone and quit calling the police on everybody.
I have nothing.
That's the most concise you've ever been, James Campbell. Thank you very much. That's it for this week. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and please rate us on iTunes. Much thanks to our in-studio producer, Keegan DeLeo. We'll see you next week.